This podcast does not provide medical advice. The information included but not limited to any videos, texts, graphics, image materials, or any programs or consultations contained within this podcast are for information purposes only. The podcast does not constitute providing medical advice or professional services. It does not constitute a patient-physician relationship. If you have medical concerns, please seek out your private physician, or if you feel you have a medical emergency, please contact 911. Welcome to Kars Coaching, the podcast where we combine our love for cars, medicine, and self-development to get you to the life that you deserve. Welcome to another episode of Kars Coaching, where we go ahead and actually combine our love of cars as well as medicine and self-development. And today I'm excited because I have someone that I just recently met. No, I'm kidding. I'm excited because I actually have my son on as a guest, quote unquote. He's home to study for boards. He's currently in medical school. And I'll let him introduce himself and tell you guys a little bit about himself.
What's up, guys? My name is Mike Kulisz. I'm Dr. K's son. I'm not junior because it was, I think I was supposed to be, I'm Alexander, but I don't know how the family lineage works. I just know that everybody calls me junior, but you're really junior.
And the reason you're not the third is because we don't make enough money for you to be the third. So
Alexander,
middle
the
name
or the
in
third,
there,
whatever. So yeah, I'm going to be starting my third year of medical school this summer, coming up here right after boards, which should be interesting. I've been studying hard for that. Grew up in Chicago, obviously. Went to Loyola University Chicago, if I could say that. And then I did a master's afterwards, and then went to medical school now, where again I'm going to be starting my third year. And that's my biggest passion in life right now, kind of my biggest focus. No pun intended with the focus model, but right. That's definitely been my biggest passion and my focus right now.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because not all, I mean, a lot of my ER partners, their kids didn't go into medicine. I shouldn't say most, but it does seem like father, son, medicine. We just had Dr. Segura on one of our episodes. His dad was an anesthesiologist, and others, a couple people that I have as clients, their parents are docs. So the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But I know in terms of our followers for Instagram, a lot of them are young kids, and some of them are medical students as well. So I thought it was important to bring you on, and I think in subsequent episodes we'll also have different medical students, maybe in different times of their career, to be able to give people some guidance, because I'm far removed now, obviously, from medicine. When I went through, compared to now, things are much different than what they were at that time. But so in terms of medical school is always hard. I don't care if you went when I went, because we weren't as smart as the kids these days, so it kind of balances out. Or if we go, or if you're going when you are going. What do you see the kids in medical school, how do they handle their stress?
I think medical school is interesting because the way it works is you have a limited amount of time to learn so much information, right? And everything's coming at you so fast. It really is dependent upon how well you're able to absorb the material. For me, I think it's an effective way to study with Anki. So I've learned to study with Anki. I learned that from my best friend, Rishal, who taught me that, and it was game changer, changed my whole life and changed the way I study. I think some of my friends, one of my friends has a photographic memory. He's able to memorize everything first pass, right? Other people, it takes them 5 tries. I don't consider myself like I'm kind of middle of the road. I mean, there's certain things that I'm passionate about, other things that I'm not, and I do decent in school. But I think it really comes down to how well you organize your time, how well you effectively mitigate your stress, whether that's through exercise, diet, etc. And it's also just being realistic as well.
Yeah. No, I think those are important things. And being realistic is probably the key. And it's that optimistic, but you have to be realistic as well. And understand that, hey, you're paying the price now for hopefully a better life in the future. but you have to pay the price. I think the catch is a lot of people don't understand. And for some people, you mentioned it, it's easy. They have a photographic memory. They're able to go through it. But unless somebody actually goes through medical school, they really don't understand the grind that it takes to get to that point. I think that's why a lot of people that go to medical school are friends forever, because it's almost a traumatic event, right?
Yeah, it really
and
is.
trauma tends to bind people, right? People are in a plane crash together and they survive and they didn't know each other. They're going to be friends forever. You drop 200 kids into a medical school and set their brains on fire. That's kind of trauma, and they eventually, look to each other for support, which I think is extremely important.
I mean, going from that perspective, I have some classmates. I mean, actually, a decent amount of classmates that are parents, or they're married, or they have, they come from different backgrounds, and there's so many different obstacles that people face to get into medical school that, I have nothing but respect for those people, because it's such a hard. I couldn't even imagine raising a kid and having a marriage and, coming from, different backgrounds, different countries, different language barriers. There's just so many things. And it really, I think, Dr. Jr, who we just had on earlier today, he was talking about perseverance. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I see in people is that just that hard work. I think from, our perspective, I think my biggest driving force is, when my grandfather came to the country, he wanted to be a doctor and he couldn't because of the barriers that he had socioeconomically. As an, immigrant, he came to the U.S., he didn't have the time, didn't have the money, and didn't have the resources. So he worked out, in Chicago, working 2-3 jobs, and eventually put himself through, night classes to become a chemist. And, growing up when he would teach me multiplication and stuff, I saw that he had that passion for science, that passion for mathematics. And that to me has just been instilled in me since a little kid. And, there's a lot of nice things that we do. We have, the cars are amazing, but this is the only thing that I can confidently say that just, I wake up in the morning, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I find it so interesting. It's just, I don't know, it's the most stimulating thing for me. And I think I couldn't see myself doing literally anything else. I don't find any pleasure in anything else, which I think is kind of a sometimes a bad thing, right? You have to step away. But, that's kind of a long-winded answer, but there's a lot of different pieces to why you go into medicine and what, all the things that contribute to why you go into medicine.
What do you think the hardest, because you obviously had me, you had your aunt, you had your cousin, you had all of my partners, everybody telling you about medical school, right? Mm-hmm. But unless you actually go through something, it doesn't matter how much somebody tells you about something, right? What was the biggest surprise when you got to medical school, where either positive or negative, where you went, holy cow, this is great, or Jesus Christ, this is terrible?
I mean, I think I went from the master's and, so college, I started off being like a subpar student. I was getting below a 3.0 GPA first semester of college, and I was really nervous. I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to do well. I remember that general chemistry class where I met my other best friend, Yanni, who's now a first-year resident. And we looked at each other, and I remember I asked him, I said, is this my grade on the exam, or is this my seat number? Because I didn't think I did that bad on the exam. And, he's like, that's your exam grade. And I was like, wow. And that kind of humbled me. And I realized that I needed to work 10 times harder. And I think it's not so much how hard you work, but it's how efficient you are too. I think that's really important, right? If you're doing something that you're not learning the material with, you're not gonna do well. But I think the most surprising thing was I thought I learned how to study in college. I ended up graduating like a 3.75 GPA from under a 3. Then I did my master's, where my friend Vishal and I did really, really well in that. And I was like, oh, I think I have it down. And I went to medical school, and again, the first semester I was doing decent. I still was a good student, but I was like, I'm not doing nearly as well as I thought I would be doing. And I had to rechange my way of thinking in the didactic years, that perseverance, using Anki, going to professors for help. One of the biggest things I know for sure is you don't know all the answers. And the more you're not afraid to ask for help and say, I don't know this, I'm not smart enough to know this answer, the better your life is. Because I think that's the thing about medicine, is that it tries to break you, right? It tries to be a traumatic experience. It tries to teach you that you don't know everything, and it's okay to ask for help. And where are your weaknesses? And, the problem is you're doing it in a 2-year time period with all these different subjects. But, I think that the most surprising thing was that I thought I knew how to study, but I didn't. And again, it's that perseverance that I learned. So it was a surprising thing, but it was also a really big learning
You know,
experience.
that's interesting that you say that, and I've seen it firsthand. I think you're one, not because you're my son, because I'll spill some negative things about you. No, I'm just kidding. But you do obviously have that grit. And Angela Duckworth wrote a book, Grit, and they went ahead and they took cadets, and they were going through the academy. And it wasn't those that were the most athletic or the smartest, right? It really were those that had passion and perseverance, which is grit. And I think you're going to have some that are extremely smart, that are going to be able to go ahead and absorb all of that. And then you're going to have others that really have that passion and perseverance along with smarts, right? To be able to get to where you have to be. And I think it is a shame, Matt, because a lot of times when we fail something, we think that that's the end, right? And really failure is just part of learning, right? But we're so afraid to fail because that's how the school system sets us up. What'd you get? Oh, D. Oh, you're an idiot, right? No, that's not true. You just didn't learn it yet, right? Go back and be able to learn it. So I think medical school kind of humbles some people too.
Oh, 100%. It humbled me, and it taught me that there's not, I don't know all the answers. And my favorite, like I think you and I were talking about it, being from Chicago, you always tell me I used to go to the games in the 90s with Michael Jordan. There's that thing on Instagram that you always see, like of Michael Jordan. It's like the Nike
shots
commercial, and that's my favorite commercial because that literally is so true, and like those people they're not afraid to make mistakes. And I think that's the biggest thing, like, as a person, I've made mistakes in my personal life and academic life, whatever. And it's being, hey, I'm not a perfect person. And realizing that just like medical school teaches you inside the classroom that making mistakes is okay and that's how you learn. I think society nowadays, maybe we're starting to kind of we're starting to say that mistakes aren't, good and everybody should be kind of perfect. Like you kind of see this false narrative that everything should be perfect, whether it's social media or everything. That's just not true. Because I see it with medical school too. I know the medical student Andreas. He's hilarious. Yeah. One of the funniest people. How he always says things are just that are portrayed on social media. It looks like it's unrealistic sometimes. Whether it's the amount of money an influencer makes or whatever it is, it's not always true. So I just think it's just not being unrealistic and just being like, hey, I'm making mistakes. It's okay. I'm learning from them. Now, if you keep making the same mistake over and over again, maybe that's being delusional and you're not going to do well. But you have to just know when it's okay to know that you're making a mistake and how can I fix it, really.
It's if you fail once, that's okay. If you keep making the same mistake, that's a decision, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be able to, or however that saying goes, but that's true, right? It's okay to fail once, but if you keep failing on the same thing, that's you deciding to do that, right? So you have to kind of step away and figure out what the difference is. And I think the actual difference in medicine is obviously once you start working with patients, you don't have the luxury of making those mistakes, right? I mean, yes, you won't be infallible. Everybody makes mistakes, but obviously you have to be as good as you possibly can when you're taking care of patients because there's a lot at stake. I always used to say when I was in the ER, you're not making pizzas, right? If I made a cheese and sausage and you wanted pepperoni, I throw the one away and I give you a pepperoni. If I order the wrong antibiotic and somebody's allergic to something, you kill them, right? So it's not the same thing. So there is a much higher standard, which is obviously why people need to be fairly educated when they come out, and that's why they call it practice.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I feel like that would be this year learning in like the hospital setting and stuff and, learning. I feel like also too, I love, outside of medicine, I love philosophy and like philosophy of the mind and stuff. And like, the idea that, the mindset, the motive, the things you've been talking about. I think growing up, I don't know if I necessarily I didn't really pay attention too much to because I was so focused on studies and stuff. And now I see that mindset stuff, for some things, at least for me, like does definitely help. Like meditation, definitely. Like when I love that the idea of like the free will stuff and all that stuff. We won't go down the rabbit hole of that today, but like the idea that like, hey, like, do we actually have free will? How does this all work, right? And I love that aspect of philosophy because it not only ties in, the idea of controlling your emotions, like Sam Harris always talks about, like the idea of the meditation, stuff like that. He also talks about the idea of, how can you kind of learn, right? In education, like that's what we were just talking about. It's so important, right, to have that base in that education and always learn from your mistakes. Always learn, because really at the end of the day, I think education is the only thing that you really have that is nobody can take away from you, and it's just something that is just there, and that's why I love learning. So I think that's why I'm drawn to medicine too, right? So.
Yeah, I know you have a close group of friends in medical school, and I know I had an opportunity to talk to them before you started, or when you were first year, and tried to get you guys to understand not to be as stressed as you are, right? And I think one thing to get across, and you mentioned it earlier, you said didn't do very good in high school. In first year of
I didn't
college.
do good in high school really either. Yeah, that
Well,
was
you were a decent student. Yeah. You didn't like standardized tests. You know how to take standardized tests now because you've taken so many tests in medical school, and that's one thing that it beats the hell out of you. That kind of goes away after you get into medical school. But I think the important thing for everybody to understand, and you touched on this, is that one thing doesn't make your life. So if you keep coming back and you're resilient, not bouncing back, but actually bouncing forward for resiliency, right? So you didn't do as good as you thought first year. You buckled down, you figured out the system, you did good. Same thing in medical school, etc. That's the important piece for everybody to understand, is that to be successful in anything that you do, you have to pay a price. And sometimes paying that price means that you fail and you have to get back on the horse and keep going. Just like we said, perseverance. But the important part is not to stress too much during that process. And I think I told your friends, I was in the ER for almost 30 years. Not one time. I can't tell you how many people I saw, tens of thousands of patients. Did anybody ever ask me what I got in biochemistry? No. Not one time did anybody ever ask me what I got on the MCAT. Not one time did anybody ever ask, right? So the point is that, yes, those things are important. I'm not saying that they're not. But everybody puts all of the weight on one certain thing and thinks that that's going to make or break them. And that's not true. It may break you for the moment, but it won't break you for life.
Yeah, I see this even like this year. I think this was probably the hardest year, like with pathology, pharmacology, micro, stuff like that, I think. The more I kind of just didn't care, the more I did better. Now, you have to certainly care. But but the thing that I realized, I was talking to my girlfriend about this, when I wake up in the morning, I wanted to go get coffee. So I took a little cruise and I got coffee every morning. And I started my day that way. And then I went to school and I studied all day. And that little coffee run, changed my whole perspective of the day. Right? It was this whole routine thing, because it's I feel like I'm rewarding myself before I start the day. Okay, I'm doing something. I would come home at night, I would lift weights, so I'd go to the gym. And I started doing that routine, and I started putting less pressure and constantly overstudying or doing stuff that I knew that was actually not helping. I knew it in my mind that it wasn't helping me at the time, but I just couldn't pull myself back because maybe I didn't have the self-confidence to say, hey, I know this material. My grades were way better this quarter. It's the best quarter I did in medical school. So I think that was the funny thing, right? There was the cumulative things for pharmacology, all these crazy things that I thought in the beginning. I'm how am I going to pass this? But you just pass it, even if I did average on something, right? And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head too when you said that you put all your energy towards one thing. But I do notice one thing. For somebody like me, I have really bad anxiety. I'm neurotic about certain things. I'm perfectionist, whatever you want to call it. Those are my things. I love things done a certain way. When medical school was kind of done this quarter and I'm just studying for boards now, it's all on my own time. But I feel less happy and I feel more anxious now because I feel I don't have something. I mean, I have rotations to look forward to, but right now I feel I've completed this part of the journey and it's what is next? And that's that's a big thing that I noticed, that how you were talking with Fossil, it's when you complete a portion of your medical journey or whatever, it's kind of what's next.
Yeah, you always have to set goals in front of yourself.
Yes.
If you don't set a goal or you don't have a purpose, you're just kind of floundering. But, going back to what you said about setting a routine, number one, routines are important because they give you discipline. So I agree with that. But the other piece that you were actually doing is, and we touched on this in one of the Instagram posts, I think, it's that stress plus rest equals success.
Yeah.
And you and your friends, the first year when you started, you had no rest, to the point where I kept telling you, don't pull an all-nighter. I mean, we know the importance of sleep now, right? Sleep consolidates memory, right? So if you get poor sleep or you don't sleep at all, half the stuff you were studying all night, it didn't even sink into your head.
Yeah,
so
I
you're
think,
guessing, go with the C, right?
Yeah.
And I know as you went through medical school, you were sleeping. You were going in and you were doing great on all the tests, right?
I still pulled a decent amount. I mean, that's the one thing. Yeah, that's
you
the one
up
thing.
late,
Yeah.
but not like you did the first year where you were.
No, in the
up all
masters, I would, because there was so much pressure on that. I pulled a lot of all-nighters specifically before pharmacology.
Yeah.
And that's obviously, now I know that that's not good for you. What I find interesting is, I don't know if anybody's done this yet, but I know, I was reading a thing about cancer rates and amongst physicians, thyroid cancer is really high. But I'm really curious. I know, they said there's an inverse correlation between dementia and your knowledge base, right? Like your degree. I don't know if that's necessarily completely true, but that's what I've heard, right? The more you study, the higher the degree, the less chance of dementia. But I don't know if it's exactly true, but I definitely feel like, cognitively, when I don't get a lot of sleep, not only are you killing your body insulin wise, right? You're not getting that proper insulin response. You're becoming hyperglycemic, diabetes, things like that, increase obesity, but you're also, your glial system's not flushing out, right? So you're not getting that. So yeah, it's kind of a trade-off. And like how you said, it's like a traumatic experience. Like this is the hardest I've worked at something. And I don't think people, I don't think I give enough credit to people that support people through medicine. I was talking to my girlfriend about this. We went to Vegas for a couple of days after school was done, and we were talking about it. And we were like, I realized how much more I matured and how awesome it was to have a partner or somebody there with you, because I feel like it made me mature, but I don't realize it myself how much work it is, but I don't realize that there's other people around you that are supporting you. And how you were mentioning earlier, it's one thing I wanted to talk about was how you said I have such great role models in my life, physician wise, family wise. The luck of that's insane, because there's a lot of people that have no routes to medicine. They do it themselves, and I have the utmost respect for those people because it is so hard. And I think that's what the coolest part about medicine is, the people that you meet and everything comes together. And it's how you said, it's a traumatic experience, but you meet people from all walks of life. And I just have, it's just such an amazing experience that I have nothing but respect for all those people. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, and I think it is. And I wish, it's funny, I talked to your friends the first year and I talked to you, and I think some of that sunk into your head, but I do think it's extremely important for the kids. Well, medical school, pharmacy school, law school, whatever it is, have that balance, right? Because the things that you're doing now are going to affect you in the future. You're living the life you created by all of your decisions. As philosophical and as woo-woo as that sounds, that's true, right? So if you're going to spend all of your time with all-nighters, if you're going to ruin your body with banging caffeine all the time, and then when you're done, if you're going to party your rear end off because you're celebrating, yeah, I'm not saying don't do all of those things. I'm saying be conscious, right? Take it from somebody who lived probably a hell of a lot harder life than you did going through that whole process.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
And now when you get older, you have the ability to say, that was stupid. But when you go through the process, you have to do it. And I always tell this story. So when me and your mom got married, we had filet and baked Alaskan. They actually came in, the waiters, and the dessert was flaming and everything. And the next day I stepped back and I said, people came, they didn't come for the food. They came for the atmosphere. So why spend all of that money on the food? So when your aunt was getting married, I said, don't get the filet, get the chicken. She got the filet. When your cousin was getting married in Aruba, don't get the filet, get the chicken. Got the filet. When your other cousin John was getting married, same deal, right? Moral of the story is the next day I asked them, and I says, well, what did you think? They all said they should have got the chicken. So the point of the story is this. You have to go through things, right? So no matter how much somebody tells you something, unless you go through it yourself, sometimes you just have to make those mistakes or the wrong decisions and then truly understand what it is that you need to do moving forward. But yeah, I think it's, I really do feel bad with the younger crowd. Bad's the wrong term. Concerned. I think there's more anxiety in your age groups now, especially with COVID and the things that happen. Both medical students, pre-med students, kids in general, high school. Anxiety comes from fear and uncertainty because we have a computer in our pocket that we could type in anything. So if I say, what are the 10 signs of this disease? Do I have it? It'll give you all the reasons you have it. If I ask
guilty of that all the time,
yeah. And if I ask a different question, though, and say I have these, could it not be the disease? It'll give you all the reasons why not. Yeah. So the problem is you're never closing the loop. So anxiety comes from fear and uncertainty. If you could never close the loop and you grab too much information, you're always going to be anxious. But that's why you have to live in the moment.
Absolutely. I feel like that's one of the hardest things too is I always think about this from another philosophical standpoint, but right, it's like if, let's say tomorrow, right, somebody told you could live forever, right? Yeah, don't have to worry about anything, you live forever. What's the purpose of that? Like what will make you happy? I'm sure you could do so many different things. You could be a doctor, be a lawyer, you could be anything, right? But it's like I feel like it kind of finding a balance in life and finding what drives you every day, what makes you want to wake up, and realizing that there is a finite life in front of you. And, how are you going to maximize that, right? How are you going to maximize? Peter T. always talks about health span, lifespan. How are you going to maximize that stuff? What is going to make you truly happy? And, what are you going to feel fulfilled with? And I think I said in the beginning, I would work for free as a doctor. Now, I'm fortunate that I have a family that supports me and that I'm able to do that, right? But obviously
I never said I was going to support you to work for free. But
No. But I'm saying the idea of
right. No, I understand what you're saying.
That I think we all love medicine enough that's our favorite thing to do. So I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of.
No, you're actually hitting on something that's extremely important. What you're actually talking about is if you really truly want to be happy, do for other people.
Yeah.
Because if you just live inside your own head and you're constantly worried just about yourself, it's really your ability to help others that gives you that great feeling, whether it's volunteering, whether it's donating, no matter what it is. They say if you're struggling in your own head, get out of your own head and help somebody else and you'll feel a lot better.
Yeah.
And medicine does afford you the ability to be able to help others with something that's the most precious thing that we have, which is our health, right?
Yeah.
Because if we don't have our health, we don't have anything. So if you're able to help people with that, I think that's a phenomenal thing that you were afforded to do. But I do think, you have to continually set goals, even when you finish medicine, because you're going to feel that it was such a great task that you did, which it is, right? And you're going to finish your residency, and if you go on to fellowship, et cetera. And a lot of times we think, okay, that's it. Now, I don't have to set any other goals, but you should continually set goals for yourself in all of your areas of your life. You should set relationship goals, health goals, breakdown health in terms of sleep, nutrition, diet. You should have goals for all of those things. You should have goals for your relationship with others. You should have goals for your finances, etc. But, don't worry too much about all the external things, but set those goals. And when you have something that you're shooting for, it gives you purpose, gives you drive.
Yeah. I think I was talking to a clinical psychologist about this, and it was the idea, they were saying, it's like a letdown syndrome. She sees it a lot. It's a post excitement, letdown. I think she said essentially where it's you achieve something, and she sees it all the time in physicians or engineers or lawyers. They get to this end of the road, and they're like, what do I do next? Yeah. And that's what it is. It's like a letdown, and you just got to really battle through that because for me, I have anxiety. So when I channel my anxiety into school, that anxiety kind of goes away, right? And then when I get done with school and I get done with the thing, I got to figure out, okay, well, how am I gonna get rid of this anxiety a different way, right? And I think also there's great ways to do it with physical exercise, everything. There's obviously medications you could take. There's so many different ways to combat it, but for me, I'm a very natural person, right? I don't really like medication. If I don't have to take it, I don't want to take it, right? So that's just a personal preference, right? There's a lot of good stuff out there that you can take for that. And I see a lot of my friends that have anxiety. They take medication. They're doing great. Other friends are like, hey, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to run and I'm going to figure out how to combat it naturally first, which I think is the beauty of medicine, like the advancements we're making, but also there's something to be said about the natural things you could do. Like I think that there's never a...
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah.
Anxiety is worrying about the future, right?
Yeah.
The important thing to really understand is the only thing you can control, to some extent, some people say they can't, but you should be able to, your thoughts and your behavior. We're always worried about controlling things we can't control, and that creates anxiety for us, right? If you live in the present moment and you understand mindfulness, and mindfulness is just living in the present moment with openness, curiosity, and no judgment.
Yeah.
The way I describe mindfulness is think back either when you saw somebody or you were the kid themselves that on Christmas Day, a 4-year-old, somebody who understands what the toy is, opens up the toy that they wanted. That's mindfulness. They're present in that moment. Yeah. They don't care that they were fighting with their best friend Susie across the street because... they got the same color tricycle, right? They don't care about what's going to happen tomorrow. That's mindfulness, being present in the moment. Yep. We as humans, we don't. Time travel. Constantly worried about what's going to happen in the future. Constantly thinking about the past. Not living in the moment, and we miss it. We miss everything.
I feel like that's maybe evolutionarily too. Like if you think about it, it's like, if you go back, I was listening to a podcast, I think it was maybe Peter Attias too, and it was talking about how the hunter-gatherers, right? Like if they killed an animal, right? Like they were really happy that they killed the animal, but they weren't going to sit around there and wait around forever. They had to be the next thing. And now in society today, you can go to Taco Bell, get your taco, go to Shell next door, get your gas, and you got all your tasks done for the day. Well, there's nothing really to look forward to now. So now you're in your own mind, right? You're worrying about the future. You're depressed about the past. So I feel like that's, there is a lot more worry in society today, and I think also compounding with that, the idea that social media tells you to be perfect, you gotta have this, you gotta have that, and that's just not true. I feel like there's so many things.
There is no such thing about perfect.
As much as I am a perfectionist and I love things a certain way, I realize that you can barely control your own thoughts and behavior. I feel like at a time, right? It takes a lot of discipline to control your own thoughts. And that's why when you always talk about that this is you're not perfect yourself. You've realized these things over the time, and that you're telling yourself, maybe do this, even if you do this 50% of the time, it's better than not doing it at all, right? That's the biggest thing, is that mindfulness is so important.
No one is perfect, and I'm far from perfect. I've made tons of mistakes, whether that be not in relationships, because I'm still married to your mother.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean we don't argue or things of that nature. Have I made mistakes raising you? You turned out phenomenal, despite how I raised you, right? So I think those are important things. But we're always going to try to be able to get better. That's the important thing, and that's what we should continue to actually strive to be able to do. So I think that's the catch.
It's like a car, right? Every time they update a car, it's a mid-cycle refresh. They're fixing the problems with the car, right? And that's what we got to do every year. It's cliche as it is.
You were saying about being perfect. The whole catch is that it's okay to try to strive to be as excellent as you can and have perfectionistic strivings. But you can't be a perfectionist, because if you're a perfectionist, it actually holds you back. A lot of perfectionists won't try things, right? Because they have a fixed mindset, and they say, I won't be able to accomplish that because I don't have the skills, and it has to be perfect. No, things don't have to be perfect. And a lot of times people wait for the perfect time to start, and that holds them back from success and everything else. There will never be a perfect time. Never. So if you're going to want to do something, start. And it goes fast. Right?
And you know this now, this year too, we were talking about, how the action aspect, you're so knowledgeable in everything. And then you were telling me, hey, I wasn't taking action. I took action. And this has been so much different, right? Because you took the action. And I did that, I feel like a lot of the times too, where it's like, hey, like, you know, I got to take action on this, got to do it. And it's like with anything, right? You got to like really put your foot down and be like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to, where there's a will, there's a way, right? So I think that's really important too.
Yeah, but you definitely have to take action. Like I should have taken the gas hose out of the.
Oh yeah, the gas hose out of the thing. That was all right. That was a little. We were driving home from Arizona, and we pulled into a gas station, and I guess it's like a routine thing, right? You always pump gas a certain way, so I was like, all right, I'm gonna pump gas. So I left the gas thing in there, and then my dad got in and drove away. So we had a little gasoline shower.
It was funny. I walked into the gas station. The guy was telling me, "Is that your pump? It's raining."
I've never seen you run that fast.
Yeah, you said. Yeah. I really got moving.
It was like remember how you always talk about the banister, the 4-minute mile? That was like it was a 10-second
But
mile.
You know what was funny about that, which actually we could relate to something else, was how calm the guy was. That I told him. I says, "Hey, listen, there's gas shooting all over." "No problem, bud." I go, "No, you don't understand. It's shooting." "I got you, bud."
Yeah, and he walked like right through the gas and turned
it. He walked slow, and he hit the button. And I says, "Oh, I'm so sorry." He goes, "Happens at least twice a week,"
Yeah.
So I'm not the only idiot. But the important thing there is you get what you focus on, right? We weren't focusing. Lack of sleep, because we're kind of tired while we were driving, and you don't focus on stuff. So the importance of focus is just huge to be able to do that. So yeah, you were talking about the importance of support, and I think support is huge. And when you look at burnout, people that have strong support systems and they go through something traumatic, they get through it a lot better than people that don't have a support system. So I think you were mentioning that there's some kids where they're married, there's a wife and a small baby, and they're going through medical school, and you're going through it yourself, right? You have support from your girlfriend, from your parents, right? But some of those people don't have support at all. Do you have any friends like that have you've seen them struggle through?
I mean, I think there's a lot of people that are, one of my really good friends now. Her and I were talking. She's from California originally, and now she's in, school. And I feel like that, being away from your family and just going through it like solo, like you really rely on your friends for so many things, right? And I mean, also too, like the idea of like medical school, number one, is monetarily costly. Number one, you're really going in a ton of debt. The hours suck, whether it's working clinicals or working in residency, right? Like just brutal. And I feel like, if you don't have a strong support system, the burnout is there. And I think maybe people don't understand the definition of burnout, and like maybe they don't realize that they are experiencing burnout, right? So I think I give, like I said, just the utmost respect. Even studying for the MCAT by yourself, like without like a lot of like resources and just like a lot of time like working, that's just insane. And I think, I just have a lot of respect for those people because I did it a different way, right? I did the master's and I had great family support, monetarily support, all these things. It was completely different, right? And so I think, the more I see people doing it solo, or even people doing it with like a family, like a little kid relying on them already, it just shows you like their passion for medicine and how, it's really amazing.
It's actually interesting you're talking about burnout, and people used to think that burnout was only for physicians, and now everybody is experiencing some type of burnout, and I think COVID-19 kind of unmasked a lot of that as you continue to move forward. But they did a study, this was a few years back, where they took kids that were graduating from college, and they took those that were going either just graduating from college and going into the workforce or going on to a master's degree or graduate school. And then they took the medical students, those that graduated and got accepted to medical school. And when they looked at them from a psychological perspective, the med students were happier and better adjusted. Then they re-looked at it, and that all went away after the second year of med school, right? Because of the amount of stress, right?
It's crazy.
Because of the amount of burnout, right? We talk about burnout all the time. Well, burnout really happens, Burnout's been around for a long time. It was coined in the 70s by a gentleman by the name of Freudenberger, and really was made famous by Christina Maslach, her lighter in Jackson in the 80s. And they've been following it in physicians for a long period of time. And now greater than 50% of physicians are actually burnt out. After the pandemic, 1 out of 5 healthcare workers actually left the profession. But burnout actually occurs because of 6 things, according to Maslach, Leiter, and Jackson. And the first thing is workload. So think about medical students and the amount of workload, right? 10 times, 20 times more than what you had to do in college. Definitely more than in high school, right? Second thing is relationships, right? Now, there may be relationship struggles if you went into medical school with a girlfriend and now she feels, or girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, now they feel as though they're not the most important. Now you got a relationship struggle, or you don't get along with the kids in school, right? Third thing is recognition. Well, sometimes you're not getting the recognition that you thought you were going to get. You may not be doing as well as you thought, right? Kids that get into med school are those that actually excelled at everything, right? Now you're coming in with a group of people that are the same, right?
That's the one thing I realized too. Like there's like that. It's not like you're in high school or college where there's some people that are doing something completely different. They don't care about their grade in this. Everybody's trying to get an A.
No, right. It was funny. They were talking. I think this was to a group of physicians. I was listening to a podcast or something, and they said that physicians, it's hard to convince them that in any medical school that 50% of the students are in the bottom half, right? Think about it, right? Look at Harvard. You get all of the people that come to Harvard. All of them were exceptional. But when you rank that class, someone's going to be the last person, right?
And they're still going to be called
So now
doctor.
that reward and recognition isn't there, right?
Well, there was a funny I'll let you get back to the burnout things. I think you're on the 3rd or 4th one, like the qualities. But my one professor was telling us, he's a physician, and he was telling us that, like medical students are just always so ready to go, and like they have this eagerness, like they're always trying to get an A. And he's like, he was talking about learning a new language, right? I think it was like Hungarian or something, and he was basically saying that like if you go to the mall and ask somebody how long do you think it'll take you to learn a language, they're like, oh man, years, right? I don't know if I'll be able to ever fluently learn it. If you go to a college language department, they're like, maybe 3 to 5 years, right? And then you go up to a medical student, you say, hey, how long will it take you to learn the language? The medical student's response is, when's a test, right? Because they're going to learn the language as fast as they possibly can. Mm-hmm. And it's that neuroticism kind of that just go, that really leads like to burnout, right? The workload, right? All those things you mentioned, right? So I'll let you go. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. We were saying workload. We were saying relationships. We were saying the rewards may not be there. And then there's fairness. As well as a mismatch in values, right? So you have a lot of those stressors, and med students are getting burnt out, and they're getting depressed, and then that just continues as you go through residency and becoming a physician, etc. But everybody's struggling with burnout now, and the way to really battle that now is really having strong emotional intelligence, your ability to be self-aware, right? Emotional intelligence is broken down into 4 things: self-awareness, self-management. That's on your side of the table. And then you deal with other people. That's social awareness and relationship management, right? So what's life? First, taking care of yourself, then being able to relate to others. If you can get that down where you're self-aware, you can call out your emotions. Hey, I'm frustrated. Hey, I'm disappointed. Hey, I'm this. And be able to manage those emotions, and then be able to relate to other people and be able to go ahead and lead those other people, you're going to be in pretty good shape. But a lot of people don't have emotional intelligence, right? And a lot of med students, they got a lot of book smarts, but they might not have that self-awareness.
Well, that's me too, I think. Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me. I think I get frustrated easily, right? And that's something that I've been working on, because, I mean, you get frustrated easily,
Well, because you want to be a perfectionist, and you named them. Perfectionistic, neurotic, and an introvert are the 3 things that predispose you to burnout. Now, you could get it. It doesn't mean you have to have those things, right? And then once you're burnt out, right? Because what happens? You're emotionally and physically exhausted. You start to be cynical, kind of start being a jackass a little bit, and you feel like no matter what you do, it doesn't matter. And then it's just this downward spiral.
It's crazy.
So you have to be able to make sure you have strong groups. You have to make sure you have the right mindset to be able to push in the right direction. So, well, it's good that you're going to be home for a little bit now.
Yeah.
So we get to, and again, why did we start this podcast? It wasn't because Elia, our great guy behind the scenes, didn't have anything to do. We started it because we love cars. We love self-development,
Yep.
right? And that's why we kind of went ahead and started it. So I'm glad you're back, because maybe we could do some stuff with cars. I know we were just in Arizona getting some of the cars taken care of there. You just picked up the piece that today. We've got a couple things that we want to do to our current cars, and I think it should be a good summer.
Yeah, it should be fun. I think we're going to do a couple things to maybe the M5 and just hang out with the Pista. Everything else is kind of scattered. We have the dealer down in Florida with the GT Black and stuff like that. So I don't know. And then got the surprise, the Puro Sangway. That'll be an interesting specking video. I'm sure maybe we'll do a cool video or something like that. But it's been fun. I think the cars are like a great way to connect with people. And I think medicine and cars, like Dr. Segura's answer, I think it's like the stereotypical doctor answer, right? It's a 911.
Right.
Yeah, it's always a Porsche. And I've always thought that. And I remember you telling me that when you were growing up, didn't the physician that you knew, didn't he drive a 911? Or did he have
That was in
SL?
medical school.
Oh, medical school, yeah.
In medical school, some of the kids had better support systems because their dads were docs already, whereas you mentioned my father, your grandfather, was a chemist, so I didn't have a Porsche, but I was lucky I had a new car. I had a Nissan Pulsar. Look that one up, guys. They didn't make that anymore, but the first one was it almost looked like a TR7 for those of you that remember the Triumph. It was like this wedge. I had that car, and then I had the new version of it with T-tops and thought I was the cat's rear end, right, with those cars. And now
I like the older stuff now, like the E92, the 993, that kind of stuff. Like, we have the Tundra now that we have, but I feel like I love the Tundra. I mean, the Tundra is like my favorite to drive every day in Arizona. It's just awesome. And then, it's I don't know. I feel like the older cars, like they really don't make them like they used to. I feel like that's the cool thing. But there's some newer stuff too, for sure. That's out there. And I think this summer will be really fun to do some car stuff. I know, like, we try to do a good mix on the page, and I think people really enjoy that.
Well, I want to thank you. You're going to be on a lot of these other ones coming up. I want to thank Elia behind the scenes. And this was kind of an impromptu one where we kind of touched base, talked about med students and things to remember. The important thing is always to take care of yourself first. And we'll talk to you guys next time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.